And welcome back to Crash Media Paranormal. This is Craig.
And this is Ashley.
And tonight we're going to talk about the best reads of 2024, Tales from the Dark Shelf. And we start right now. All right, Miss Ashley, how was your day today?
Today was pretty good. It's been kind of a hectic week, but today was all right, except for one little fiasco. I had
Oh,
an interview that was going to be like over Zoom, and I had everything ready. Everything was set up. I had tested my camera and audio on the computer, had lighting, everything. Right before, like 2 minutes before I was supposed to be in that meeting, the computer, everything messed up. So I had to panic for 2 minutes, get everything switched over to a different computer, get everything, and ended up being a couple minutes late. But thankfully, the other people were later, so they
well,
didn't know I was late.
that sounds about like our experiences doing this podcast.
Yeah.
So we're
Yeah,
used
that's
to
what I was
panic.
thinking of. It's like we would have everything ready, everything was perfect, we'd test stuff, and as soon as we would go live, things would start to mess up and have all kinds
Exactly.
of technical difficulties, and that's what I always thought of.
It
So
felt
how
like
was your day?
it was hectic. Getting ready for a field trip to New York City, and that's going to be
New
in
York
March.
City!
New York City, with my seniors, and that's going to be fun. So we're going to have a great time. We
Yeah.
also have one on my birthday to see a wonderful Spanish language ballet or dance group. It's called Flamenco Ballet, and it's really nice. The kids love it. It's high energy. It's a lot,
Mhm.
and they love the dancers and everything. So that's gonna be fun, and that's on my
Yeah.
birthday. So when we go to eat afterwards, I'm like, y'all better make them sing for me. But
Last year around your birthday, we were at, Old State
oh, that's right, and y'all surprised me with a birthday cake, and I was like, literally,
strawberry cake.
it's
It was good.
strawberry cake, and it came out of the kitchen. I thought, oh, someone's birthday. It's my birthday, but oh, someone's birthday, and they just kept coming. They kept coming. They kept coming. I'm like, that's for me.
Yeah,
Y'all
we
really
were
did good. Y'all, I had no clue.
trying.
I was like, oh, someone else's birthday is today, so that was fun.
Yeah.
Tonight we're going to be talking about one of my newer. It's not my new passion, but it's my new one of my new passions is reading. Um, I've been a reader since I was literally like 10 years old. I was reading the Star Wars books, and I started reading Stephen King when I was like 13, Anne Rice. I remember the day I picked up Interview with the Vampire. I was still a teenager. And so I love to read, but my problem was I never read. And so at the beginning of last year, and we talked about this a lot, so at the beginning of 2024, I just started getting back into reading at the end of 2023. And then on the first day of 2024, I set my reading goal as I'm going to make myself read 6 full novels this year.
Mhm.
I clocked in at 71. So I sort of blew it away, but it was like I wanted to. One of my goals right now at this moment in my life is I want to enjoy the things that I enjoy doing.
Mhm.
I've worked my whole life working for other people and doing things for other people. It's like I'm focusing on me. One of my ghost hunting. That's the reason I started ghost hunting 18 years ago, and that's the reason I said, you know what, I'm gonna enjoy reading again.
Mhm.
So last year in 2024, 71 books. So I think I did pretty good.
Mhm.
And
I would
actually,
Mhm.
yeah, well, actually, it all started sort of. I had picked up a book and we were talking on one of the investigations. I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm reading this cool book," and you're like, "Oh, I just finished this book. Tell us a little
Mhm.
bit about that one." That one was
Uh, let's see, which one? Because there was 2 of them.
no,
Nosferatu, is that the one you're talking about?
Well, yeah. Well, I'll talk about Nosferatu because Nosferatu by Joe Hill, who is the son of Stephen King. This was my first audiobook. So one of the things that I'm doing this year or last year and this year is I've always got an audiobook on and I've always got a physical book. I have a Kindle, so either a physical page book or a Kindle book. And
Mhm,
then when I'm in the car or when I'm cleaning the house or things like that, I have an audiobook. And my very first audiobook was Nosferatu by Joe Hill.
mhm,
And I was at the gym and I was like, oh, I'm about to go to work. Oh, yeah, I've heard about this Libby app where you can, check them out from the library. So I downloaded that and found a book. And I found this one. I looked and it was narrated by none other than Captain Catherine Janeway, Kate Mulgrew. So I was like, oh, yeah, I'm sold. So I thoroughly, thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyed Nosferatu.
mhm.
It really, Joe Hill's writing style is very much like his father, so it did feel like reading a Stephen King novel, or listening to a Stephen King novel. What are your takes on audiobooks? Because I've heard both things. I've heard some people, oh, audiobooks, that's not reading, that's cheating. I'm like, no,
Mhm.
you're getting the same information. Instead of using
Yeah.
your eyes, you're using your ears. And I know how to pronounce the names.
Um, I'm fine with audiobooks. I personally prefer to actually, like, read the book
Mhm.
just because I like to me, there's something very comforting about the whole process of it, like being in your hand and like the smell of a book and
Right.
everything. Being able to like cozy up somewhere and read. I like doing that. But also a problem with that is a lot of times I'll go to bed with a book
Mhm.
and before I know it, it's 4 a.m. and I'm
I've
still
done
reading
that.
it.
I've done
And
that.
so audiobooks, I like that the convenience of that. I can listen like during the day
Mhm.
while I'm doing stuff,
Right.
and I don't, get too carried away in or lost in it that I forget what time it is.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
And so, but I prefer the actual like reading a physical book for those reasons. But then, and also audiobook though, I do like the convenience of that.
Mhm.
And also sometimes have I love listening to storytellers, so it's kind of a different experience, I feel
Right.
like,
Yeah.
because you listen to someone telling you and you can, um, it's just yeah, I'm good with both.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And, we sort of bonded over, the following book, which is
The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires,
and
and so that
yeah.
was another one I read, 2 summers ago, and I think that's one that I was like, "You've gotta read this book,"
Mhm.
and, yeah, I love this one. I it has not so great reviews just because I feel like people were expecting, um, it's about slaying vampires and stuff. Like I think people expected a little something different than what it was, even though it did have those horror aspects to it. It had a lot of like underlying, it just some. 'Cause it's set in the '80s. It kind of
Mhm.
starts out in the '80s, so there's a lot of misogyny, a lot of things like that, and a lot of other
Abuse, yeah,
elements to it.
yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of abuse, and some scenes are
Yeah.
very graphic, but they also wove through a lot of humor with it. So,
Mhm.
even, in the title itself, you know, the title itself makes you wanna makes you wanna read the book, and it also made me a huge fan of Grady Hendrix.
Yeah.
So I really do enjoy his writing style and
Mhm.
the way he's able to use humor. But yeah, there are a lot of really dark elements in this. A lot of assault, a lot of misogyny, a lot of racism.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, a lot of racism,
yeah.
and that's one thing that to me was so much harder. Okay, so like I love the horror genre,
Yeah.
and I love sometimes you watch even like a movie, you just want that good jump scare, like
Mhm.
thrill or whatever. But there's some horror movies that you might consider them horror, but they don't really play into the horror of it, but go more in depth with like a story. And I feel like this book kind of did that as well. to me, that can be a lot more horrific than the monster itself, like the
Yeah.
vampire itself, all of these other things. And there's moments in this book where, like, her husband, like, she's very belittled by, like, the character. She's very belittled by the men, and all the wives were kind
Right.
of like that. And so, and a lot of wives just, um, they accepted that, don't speak up, don't
Yeah.
speak your mind type of thing. And this one character, like, she challenged that because things were not right, things were not okay. And to me, that is so much harder to read, and it gets you on a different level than just the horror jump scare stuff.
Right.
And so there's a lot of elements like that in the book that just a lot of people um, gave it bad reviews, but I thought the writing style
Yeah.
was great. A lot of times I'll read a book, and even if I like the book, there's a lot of writing pet peeves I have that I'm like, I like his style. It's
Yeah.
easy to read, and it's not overdone in certain ways. And so, yeah, I thought it was really good.
Yeah, and I read several of his books during the year, and I've got several more already, on my TBR. Um, so I really like his style, but that also draws me to like ghost hunting, and we've said this before on a ghost hunt. We're more scared of real people than we are of deceased people or alive people than deceased people when we go to a location that we're not familiar with. It's like we're used to dealing with dead people. It's the living that are really scary, and you
Yeah.
can see that in this book. It's the living that are really scary on top of the, of course, it's about vampires. So on top of the vampires, you've got that human danger that, is actually sometimes more scary.
Yeah. They were gonna make that into either a series or a
Hmm.
movie. I
Yeah.
haven't heard any updates on that, but
Yeah.
I hope they do. And one more thing I like about this, it's a different take on vampires.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's very, very,
So,
very different.
yeah, I don't wanna give anything away too much, but did you ever see that series? I can't remember what it was called, but it was like I think it only had like 1 or 2 seasons, but it was on FX, I think, and it was about vampires, but it kind of had that the way the vampires were, it was very closely to how the vampires described
Oh, yeah,
in
yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. My brain is not braining. Um, it's almost like they were a plague. And it started
Yeah,
on
it
the
was a
airplane. Oh my gosh.
yeah,
It's there. It's in my head and I can't think. I loved it. It was really,
I'm
really
gonna look
good.
it up.
Okay. You're like me.
And
I have to look it
this
up.
book this book I think came before that, but the way the vampires were and everything,
Yeah, the
I'm
way
gonna
they're
look
portrayed. Yeah, and sort of like the
it
way
up.
they go about their business. Yeah, I know exactly what the age. I can't remember.
Strain.
Strain, the strain. That's
Yeah,
it. That's it. That's it. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I can definitely see those
yeah.
similarities.
Jeremy says hello.
Hello, Jeremy. How's everything?
But yeah, I just thought it was cool too
Yeah,
because of that, because it, gives you a little bit of a different expectation of the vampires.
right,
So
exactly. And like I talked about Stephen King. I think the first book I read from Stephen King was Salem's Lot. And Salem's
mhm.
Lot, of course, I'd seen the movie with David Soul or the TV, mini series with David Soul, and I was like, I gotta read this book. So that's what got me into horror. And I've already mentioned in several podcasts the movie The Shining got me into horror movies.
Mhm.
And both of those I saw and read way too young. I was not old enough to watch this movie, and I was not old enough to read this book, but I got sucked in. Um,
Yeah.
and
Well, I
tell us,
have a question.
uh huh.
Finish what you were saying, then I have a
No,
question.
no, you're good. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, back to Nosferatu.
Mhm.
How would you compare Joe Hill's writing to Stephen King? Do you think? I mean, obviously Stephen King had some influence, being his father,
Yeah.
but how would you compare the two?
I mean, honestly, I've read I think 3 Joe Hill books, and all of them it feels like you're reading Stephen King,
Mhm.
especially Nosferatu. That one you really do feel like you're in Stephen King's world.
Yeah.
because he's really good at that world building. There are some differences, but I do enjoy it. I enjoy his writing style because it is very reminiscent of his father. So you can definitely see that influence.
Yeah.
But he is striking out and giving his own voice.
Yeah, and I like that, and I don't mean compare in like
Mhm.
a negative way or
No,
anything,
no,
but
absolutely.
I feel like there are a lot of similarities, but I like that because
Hmm.
it almost felt nostalgic, even though if it's a new book, it still feels nostalgic because it kind of feels more like Stephen King's style in a
Yeah,
way.
exactly. And the audiobook again, huge shout out to Kate Mulgrew because that
Mhm,
narration of that audiobook
mhm,
was absolute perfection. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed every single second of listening to that audiobook. So that one,
mhm,
there are some books that you're like, yeah, you need to read the book, and some books you really need to listen to the audiobook. Like, for example, right now I'm currently reading Project Hail Mary,
mhm,
and it's science fiction. It's like perfection. And everyone said, do the audiobook. The audiobook. The book's great, but the audiobook just takes it to another level.
mhm,
100% correct. I'm enjoying every second of that. So, Project Hail Mary on audiobook, do it. You will not be disappointed.
mhm.
But tell me a little bit about the book that got you into reading when you were a kid.
Probably the first book that I ever really was interested in too, and also that got me interested in. Well, one of the reasons that I became interested in the paranormal was 13 Ghosts of Alabama and Jeffrey.
Hmm.
That's one we've shared on here before, and it's full of I mean, it's got the Alabama ghost, but she also has, like, Georgia,
Hmm.
Mississippi, Tennessee, like, 13 ghost stories of each state in the South. She Catherine Tucker Wyndham, she was a storyteller, and, it has these old ghost stories from different locations that she pretty much made famous here in the South. One being the Drish House, which we've
Yeah.
investigated before. It's on one of our episodes,
Hmm.
and so that's one of the stories. And I remember my grandmother. Uh, I would go to her house, and I remember she would, whenever I would spend the night or anything, I'd get her to read me bedtime stories from that book. And so before I could even read, I was having grandparents read me these stories, and so
Oh, I checked that out of the library so many times. It was unreal. In my elementary school library, my middle school library, I'd check it out, read it, turn it back in.
yeah,
I loved it.
that's I owe all of my spookiness to this book.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. I
Mhm,
understand. Mine okay, I grew up in the time of the book fair. Do you remember the book fair? So or
mhm,
the bookmobile. We had a bookmobile, and, it was this big bus just full of books. We could go, and buy books. But we'd always get the little scholastic reader sheets and everything, and I was like, "Yes!" So
mhm,
one of the books that I got from the scholastic readers, was a book called House of Stairs. This book blew my mind. My little, I think maybe ninth or 10th grade. No, not even ninth or 10th grade, like elementary school mind. And I have this book. I still have every single book that I read as a kid. I've never thrown away a book. So
mhm.
I have found this book. It is unreadable because it is so old. This is from late 70s, early 80s. And it literally, I've opened it and I'm like, ooh, it's about to fall apart. So I want to buy this book again just to read it again because it's very young adult. Um, YA, but it's about a group of kids. It's like a dystopian future, and a group of kids are like kidnapped and brought to this building that's just stairs. It's like this massive space with just stairs, and they have to figure out the rules, almost like Hunger Games in a way. And I
Mhm,
remember some of the scenes, like they had to dance a certain way to get food, and it was very dystopian, but very, very good. And I would love to reread it. I want to reread mine because it will literally fall apart if I try. But that's one that I'm gonna look for and try to reread. But
mhm,
for some reason, that book has always stayed in my head. And as I was, doing the research for this episode, I was like, "Oh, I've got to mention The House of Stairs." That was an
mhm.
awesome book.
Yeah.
And So we were talking earlier about uh, Grady Hendrix. As
Mhm.
soon as I finished, actually, the first book that I read, the first physical book. So, like I said, Nosferatu was my first audiobook. My first physical book was How to Sell a Haunted House. This did not turn out the way I expected it to turn out, and I mean that in the most delightful way. Uh, it is a trip. This definitely showcases his humor, and it showcases his dark side. And I do not like puppets and dolls. So if you have a fear of puppets and dolls, this is 100% the book for you. It's one of those books that just it did not turn out in any way, shape, form, or fashion the way I thought it would, and I mean that in just a very good way. So
Mhm.
this again just made me a huge Grady Hendrix fan. So as soon as I finished that one, of course, I had to pick up Horror Store, the most interesting, one of the most interesting books, because the entire book is laid out like a furniture store catalog, like an IKEA, and it's
Uh-huh.
about a group of employees that decide they're going to stake out their, where they work. They work there, and they're going to stay all night because some things are happening. They're trying to catch people breaking in and stuff like that, and basically they end up going to hell. So it's a good read. It's a fun read because it's very, very different. And when you open the book, you immediately know this is not going to be your normal literary ride. So this one is very highly recommended as well. Along with Grady Hendrix, also an audiobook, and one of the other audiobooks was the Final Girl Support Group. And this one popped up on my Libby app, and I'm like, "Yep, sure, let's read it, or let's take a listen." And it was pretty good. It's basically all of the Final Girls, sort of based off of, you know what a Final Girl is, of course.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
so it's basically Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Prom Night. All the Final Girls are grown up and they're older, and they end up in a support group, and someone comes after them one by one, and you got to see who is going to be the final girl. So it's definitely one that I enjoyed, and I've got several more of his that I'm going to be reading pretty soon. So
Mhm.
what are your classics? Let's talk
Mm.
about some of the classic horror books, because one of the things I did this year also, or last year also, was I wanted to read some of the classic books that I've never read but have always heard about. So,
I guess for me, really the only things that come to mind would be like Stephen King books,
uh-huh, mhm.
um, or like Anne Rice books, which
Yeah,
probably would be my favorite as Anne Rice books, but or you can go into like Mary Shelley and stuff like that.
right.
But um, yeah, probably my favorites would be some. And I mean, some people might not consider those classics, but I do.
Oh yeah, those are absolute classics.
Mm-hmm.
Also within classics to me, some of the ones that I did read this past year. Number one, The Amityville Horror is one of those books. I've seen the movies, but I never actually read the book. And of course, this was one of my audiobooks, and I read most of this on the way to and on the way back from one of our investigations. Because as you know, it's a couple hours to get, 2 or 3 hours to get to some of our locations. And most of you live in Tuscaloosa. I live in Birmingham, so I have to go by myself. Perfect
Mm-hmm.
reading time. So this is very, very well written. Of course, we know now that a lot of this is, made up, um, and it's not exactly a true account, but the book is 100% readable. It's very, very well written, and it'll send some chills. And
That statement right there, "This book will scare the hell out of you," that's a pretty bold statement
yeah,
because it's hard to find a scary book, so how would you feel it lived up to that statement?
well, it was the 70s. And what may scare the hell out of you in the 70s may not be what scares the hell out of you in 2020s. But on the flip side of that, The Exorcist.
Mhm.
OM freaking G. This book is scary. This book is scary. And again, this one was an audiobook, but it was read by William Peter Blatty, the author. And when I say his voice was the utmost perfect voice for this book, it was like while you're listening, you're like, oh, that's the guy who actually wrote this. But this book is scary. This book is literally scary. I was driving home. I think it was from, oh my gosh, it wasn't Old South, not Old South Pittsburgh, but crap, the other one. Um,
Harriman?
yeah, Harriman. It was Old Harriman Hospital. So driving back from Old Harriman Hospital with this on was like, okay, yeah, this is a scary book. So that was one of my classics that I just absolutely loved. And one of the other ones that I wanted to talk about is one of your favorites too, The House on Haunted Hill by Shirley Jackson. And I hadn't read this for a long, probably since I was a kid. So I reread this one. This was a physical book, so I reread this one. Um, and yeah, it still holds up. It still holds up. Um, I also read its official sequel. It does have an official sequel that came out last year called A Haunting on the Hill by Elizabeth Hand. I don't know. This was, okay, how do I explain this? This was authorized by Shirley Jackson's estate to be the official sequel. And it was good ish. It was good ish. This is one of those books that I did not like a single person in the book.
Mm.
It's okay. So a group of actors and a producer gets together and rents Hill House for a week to work on a play. And one of the characters to me were just highly annoying. Like one of them would just burst out in song. Her like voice can leave you in tears. And it's like, if I was around her, it'd be like, if you don't shut up, no, this is not the time to be singing.
Mhm.
It's just a bizarre book. I could see they do have a lot of callbacks to the original novel, and but I don't think it held up. In my opinion, it didn't hold up to the original. And a lot of online reviews that I read were like, "This is the one that they chose as the official sequel." That's really strange. But
Mhm.
you know, the ending was really good. Now, but getting to that ending was very tedious. So that was one that I had to sort of make myself read a little bit.
Mhm.
Um,
And I love this series.
yeah, yeah, and
So
you got to
that
realize that's very loosely based, off of it. The Haunting, which with Liam Neeson and Luke Wilson, that was the official like
Catherine
adaptation.
Zeta-Jones
Yeah,
is
Catherine
in
Zeta-Jones. Yep, yep.
mhm,
It was really good. I want to rewatch that. That's one that's on my rewatch list to watch
mhm,
that. But yeah, the other one, well, yeah, you are a huge fan of the series, which I am too. The
mhm,
series is phenomenal. I want to rewatch that, as well.
mhm.
Also,
'Cause with the series, you go into The Haunting of Bly Manor,
hmm
also The
yeah,
Fall of the House of Usher,
yeah,
and I just
they're
those
they're amazing. They're
yes,
well
and that's
acted, well
another
written.
one. Some people gave those bad reviews, and I'm like, "What?
Ow,
Those were
those were
awesome."
amazing. Um,
Mhm.
have you heard of Hell House? Richard
I've heard of
Matheson.
it.
Yeah, that one was. This one was like it was written in the '60s, I believe, in the '60s, and it's it's racy. It's got a lot going in it. It's I really enjoyed that book. That one is probably one of my favorite haunted house novels I've read. That one, you go into the Velasco house, you're like, yeah, something's going to happen. So I did enjoy Hill House. That was one of my classics that I said, yep, it's time to read this one. Yeah, I liked it. That's a straight up good haunted house book.
Mhm.
So there another haunted house book that I made myself read. There is an infamous book that's been out for about 20 years. And when I say infamous, it's billed as one of the best horror haunted house books ever written, and one of the most interesting books ever written, and one of the hardest books to read. And that is The House of Leaves. And I have had this book for over a decade. And I'm not lying. I've had this book on my bookshelf for over a decade, and I tried to read it one time over 10 years ago and just could not get past like 10 pages. I'm like, I
Mhm.
can't do it. And so when I started this reading journey, I laid that out on my dresser. I said, I'm going to read this year. It is bizarre. There's about four different novels within this book. There's the main story, which is about a documentary about a house that is bigger on the inside than it is on the outside, and a 5 minute hallway, a hallway that takes 5 minutes to walk down, that just sort of appears inside the house. And then there's another story that goes along with it about the person that studied this documentary, and the person that found the book that was a study on the documentary, and how he slowly goes crazy. But it's written very bizarrely. So here's a couple of examples of a couple of pages. You've got page within page. You've got a a story that will pick up like 3 pages later, and it just stops abruptly in the middle of a sentence, and you've got to like, okay, where does the rest of the story? You have to look for a couple of pages. And, oh, there it is. Uh, each story is written in a different typeface. Every time you see the letter house or the word house in whatever language, because some of this book is written in French, some of this book is written in like several different languages, and they give you the translations. Some of it's written backwards, some of it's written in spirals. It's very bizarre. Every time you see the word house, it's in blue, and I no one ever figured out why the house is always blue. No matter what language it's in, if it's the word house, it's in blue. Um, it's just a very, very, very bizarre book, and it took almost 3, 4 weeks to read this book. And it was one that every night I'm like, I am reading this book. I am reading this book. It's not the best book in the world. If the to me now, my personal opinion, if it was only about the documentary, that was the part that was really really good. The rest of it was like, why am I reading this?
Mhm.
I wanted to get back to the documentary, to the like discussion of the documentary. That was actually very fascinating, and that was good. The other stuff, the stuff about the guy that found it and all that, I'm like, I don't care about this guy whatsoever. But I would say half of it was like, "Ugh, come on, just get through this page, just get through this page. And the other half was like, oh, this is very interesting. So The House of Leaves, yeah, it is definitely a different type book, but you have to work. That's a book you have to work for. Um, so what would you try that book?
That seems like a little bit too much work for me.
It's
But
a yeah.
honestly, I feel like I would love to see someone take that and try to make a movie out of it.
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah,
and
yeah.
piecing
They've
things
tried.
together, some scenes
Yeah,
upside down,
yeah.
and
I
one scene stops and then another one picks up. I kinda think that would be
I
interesting.
think they've been shopping it around for a long time trying to figure out how to do it. So I think it is in production, or it has been in production, but I think there is something that's gonna come, and I think it's gonna be a series. because there's no way they could do this in a movie. So it
Mhm.
would have to be a series. But I have heard that they may be trying to make it into a series. I want to see how that works because
Mhm.
it's definitely now the main story really good. So
Mhm.
um, it it's a book. It's a book. So I'm going to count down some of my best books that I've read this past year. So one of the most interesting books that I read, and one of the books that sort of leaves you scratching your head a little bit, is The Last House on Needless Street. This was one of my audiobooks, and it's told by, I believe, four different narrators. One of them is a cat, and none of them are reliable narrators. So you don't know whether you're getting a truth or a lie. You don't know what they don't know. And you're scratching your head through the entirety of this book, but you just keep on going. And at the end, the payoff is massive. So all of these characters, all of these different narrators, it pays off in the end in the most unusual, surprising way. And there's no way that I'm ever going to give up the secret of this ending. But you are just sitting there after reading the last page going, what the hell just happened? What? Are you, what? So yeah,
Mhm.
highly recommended. I definitely
One
recommend this.
thing I do have to have spoilers on, does the animal die or does the animal survive? And so that's one thing I'll have to check with you first. I'll need to know that. I don't even in movies, as soon as like a horror movie, as soon as I see an animal, I pause it, I go to that website, doesthedogdie.com. I have to see.
I do the
And then
same
I have to
thing.
find out exactly what part to skip.
You can do anything to these characters, but you lay one hand on that dog, and I'm turning this movie. Yeah, I'm the same way. I have literally fast forwarded through scenes.
Oh yeah, I won't watch a
Yeah,
scene like that.
I have two big old massive scary pit bulls laying on the couch beside me who are just looking at me like, yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah, I know that. But
yeah.
honestly, I cannot tell you. And that's not I
Don't
won't tell
Google
you.
it.
No, it's I won't
Oh,
tell you. It's I can't tell you.
okay.
I honestly cannot tell you.
Mhm,
Um, but it's definitely a good one. Now, I read a mixture of science fiction, the Expanse series, which I freaking love. It's really good. The Expanse series is great. Um, but I'm trying to keep this one to horror books because of
mhm,
what we do. So, one of the best ghost story that I read is The Sundown Motel by Simone St. James. It all takes place in a roadside motel over two different generations of the same family and trying to figure out a murder. And ghosts are helpers. There are definitely supernatural happenings going on. And this is one of those books. I fell in love with the cover because the cover is just like, I love this cover. Something about this cover just immediately made me buy the book. And yeah, I was not disappointed. This is a solid read. I do like the way that they skip the generations. Uh, it's aunt and her niece. Uh, the aunt is, I believe, in the 80s, so some of it's set in the 80s, and then the rest, the niece, her story is set in modern time and now, nowadays. Oh, yeah, as I say here in the nowadays. But
mhm.
yeah, it's really well done. It's definitely well done. The next one of my favorite ghost story books, Diavola. This was just good. It's about a family, sort of dysfunctional, that take a yearly vacation. They're not poor. They're rather wealthy, Every year, the whole family gets together on a nice week-long vacation, and this time they chose Italy, and they stayed at a very, very, very haunted castle. And this was a solid, solid read. Uh, I don't know how much I can say about this book, but the main character sort of gets on your nerves a little bit, but you see where she's coming from, and what was in the castle follows her to different continents and cities, and it's a solid read. That one
That's a
is.
pretty cool cover.
Oh, the cover, yeah, the cover got that's another one. I do judge books by their covers, and this is one that got me with the cover. I was like, yeah, I've got to read this one. And also, I do go and really read the reviews and all that before I read a book. And that was just one that I was like, yeah, this was solid. Another one, I love Gothic. I love a good Gothic fiction. A big castle, sprawling Jane Eyre type hauntings, and one of those was The Silent Companions. It was definitely a different book. I like the way it was written. I like the years span of this ancient castle, or not ancient, but old castle. The history, it delved into the history, and a lot happens in this book. And yeah, there are a couple of, I don't, no, not really. No, I was about to say there is a cat in the book, but I believe the cat lives. But it's really good. I don't know, the Silent Companions. These are wooden figures, and they're like Icelandic wooden figures that look very, very hyper realistic, but they're painted on boards. So basically, like a cardboard board cutout of someone, except wood and oil, and just very, very hyper realistic.
Mhm.
And they play a big role in the story. It's sort of hard to describe this book. It's it's hard to describe the haunting in this book, but it's solid. It is definitely a good one. It's one I think you would enjoy.
Mhm.
I think you would definitely enjoy that. The next one, we mentioned The House of Leaves. All right, so we mentioned how this one was written, and we mentioned that you had to do a little bit of work to get through this book. The next one is sort of a little the same way, except much more cohesive, and that is We Used to Live Here. This one, again, is some of these books are just hard to describe because if you describe them, you're giving away stuff.
Yeah.
And this one is on Book Talk constantly. It's sort of the same vein of House of Leaves, of you've got things going on within a house that change. Like, wait, there's not a this wasn't a stained glass window yesterday. I don't remember this being a stained glass. You know what I mean? So,
Mhm.
or wait, this door was not here yesterday. So there's a lot that goes on within this house. And basically, you have a woman whose wife is away at the moment, and the doorbell rings. She opens the door, and it's a man saying, "Hey, I'm sorry to bother you. This is a little awkward, but I grew up in this house. This is my wife. These are my two kids. Is it okay if we have a look around? I just want to show them where I grew up." And she's like, well, I guess. And then a whole lot of stuff ensues. So the premise is really, really solid, and the payoff is really, I hate to keep using the word solid, but the payoff is solid. It's a good, almost like universe jumping type book.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that. All right. Now we've got the 2024 is the book The Reformatory. I cannot say enough about this book. Oh my God. This was an audiobook. I read the audiobook. I had it on loan, or I had waited for it for like 3 months, and it finally came available. As soon as it came available, I dropped everything and read this book because of the reviews. It is set in the Jim Crow South, and a young boy had an altercation with his friend who happened to be white, and at that time, that was tantamount to you've committed a massive crime. So he gets sent to a reformatory, basically a boys' school, and it's all based in history. It's based on things that actually happened. And while he's in this reformatory, his sister is going with prominent figures of the civil rights struggle to try to get him released. Now, the thing is, the boy can see ghosts, or as they call them, haints. And the people at the reformatory start taking advantage of this ability of his because some things have happened in the past. Literally one of the best books I have ever read in my life. And I do not say that lightly. This book is just phenomenal. If you read a book, you definitely need to read this one. This needs to be on your reading list. The Reformatory, just amazing. I
Mhm.
want to read more from her. She's got several more books out that she's on my list for this year, for 2025. So I will be reading more from her.
Mhm.
Um, the next one is going to be my what? Walking practice. This book just literally made me go, what the freak did I just read? It's about an alien who crash lands on Earth and takes the form of a person, but he doesn't quite know how to work his body yet. And he gets very, very hungry. And he's walking around the whole novel trying to figure out this body, and it's just not working for him. And yeah, I cannot describe this book at all. It was recommended to me by a Barnes and Noble employee, and I thank her every day for that. I both absolutely hated and absolutely loved this book.
What did you hate about it?
I do not know. Like I said, this book made me go, I don't know what I just read. I don't know what I didn't like about it. I don't
Mhm.
even know what I liked about it. I just know I have no idea what happened in this entire book,
Mhm.
but I read it. And it's very light. I think it's just over 100 pages. It's very easy to read. You can
Mhm.
read it in a day, but you'll be the rest of the day going, "What the freak did I just read?" All right. So I'm going to end my book review night with an honorable mention. Like I said, I wanted to keep this to horror novels,
Mhm.
but I read one sort of fantasy novel that I still think about this book constantly. And that book is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This book, oh my God. Have you ever fell in love with a book, Ashley?
Um, 13 Ghosts of Alabama and
Yeah.
Jeffrey.
Well, this is a book that I literally just fell in love with this book. This was one that I did on audio. The audio was wonderful, but I am buying the physical book, and I don't do that. I want the physical book of this just because I want it.
Mhm.
When I say I fell in love with this book, there's okay. The story is about a woman in 17th century France. She's a young woman. She's promised to someone. She's about to get married. Right when they're about to get married, she just runs away. She's like, I can't do this, and runs into the woods and meets up with a demon. And she explains to the demon, I can't do this. I want a life free of responsibilities. I'm too young to get married. I just don't want the responsibility of this. So he says, okay, done. You got it. So she goes back and realizes she cannot live in anyone's memory.
Hmm.
So 300 years pass, and during these 300 years, she cannot live in anyone's memory. So the minute you meet her, the second you turn away, she's gone. You have no memory of ever meeting her. You have no idea she ever existed. So she lives her life with no responsibilities. She can't even own a house. She can't own anything. Um, she only owns one possession that was her father's, and she only owns it because she had it on her at the time. She
Hmm.
can't write her name down. She can't even speak her name. So if she tries to tell someone my name is Addie, it just physically can't happen. If she
Hmm.
writes something, it's immediately gone. If she breaks a window, as soon as she walks away, the window's back.
Hmm.
She can steal things that no one will miss. Like if there's a dozen apples, she could take an apple and eat it. But she can't own apartments. She can't own property. She can't sign her name on anything, so she can't own anything. So she pretty much crashes. She has a lot of relationships that start over the next day. It's like, I want to live here. So basically, she meets the person again and makes him fall in love with her. But one day, she steals a book from a bookstore because she's bored. So she walks, she meets the person that owns the bookstore, and she grabs a book, and he turns away, and she just walks out, and he never realizes that she existed. She reads the book, she returns the book, and so she returns the book, and he grabs her arm and says, no, 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 no. I remember you from the last time you came in.
Hmm.
And that starts the mystery of how does he know her? How can he keep her in his memory?
Hmm.
It's phenomenal. The book is phenomenal. And I think they are going to try to adapt this into a movie or a series, but man, this one, after I read it, it's you keep thinking, what would I do in that situation if I lived an eternity, because now I'm totally immortal. I can do anything I want, zero responsibilities, no ties to the world whatsoever.
Hmm.
You can't have friends, you can't have, you know, relationships, because the second you move out of sight, you're out of mind.
Hmm.
So this was one that I could not put down. I not only couldn't I say put down, I couldn't stop listening. This is one of my audio. I couldn't stop listening to it, and I would find excuses to get in the car and go somewhere to listen to this book, because unless I'm cleaning or something like that, this is just my car, my commute time, and everything else.
Hmm.
Yeah, you would love it. Oh yeah, this is one you would thoroughly enjoy.
Hmm. When you were talking about it, I was like, that would be a really cool movie or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, definitely, definitely.
Kind of wish I could beat people to it and make my own film of it,
Let's do it.
but
Let's
couldn't
do it.
afford
Let's
the
start this week.
licensing. But
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, check that one out. I know you mentioned to me that you would like to read some more.
mhm,
With you, you're very much like me. It's just time, and I
yeah,
had to make myself do it. And this year, I am not going to say I want to read 71 books again. I might do 80. I don't know, but I'm already. It's February. I've already done about 4 or 5.
mhm,
I think 4. But yeah, I'm currently on Project Hail Mary, and what is the other one? My Precious something. Anyway, it's a horror novel. So I've got audio and a physical. So I've always got
mhm,
an audio and a physical. But yeah, that was my reading list, or the best of my reading list of the horror genre of
mhm.
2024. Thoughts? What do you
I read 0 books in 2024, so
think?
it was busy year. I just yeah, I didn't get time to read anything.
And I asked myself again, how are we friends? But yeah,
Mhm,
um, yeah. So I would love to start a. I've joined a meetup group for languages, because I love languages. So we have a meetup group that meets twice, like 3 times a month, and we go. People speak Spanish, French, German, Italian, Russian. A lot of languages. I speak Norwegian, so a lot of languages. And we also have an offshoot that's a French group, because I'm studying French right now. And I would sort of like to create a meetup for a good book club, a good like horror and science fiction book club. Because there's a feminist book club. I'm like, yeah, I'm not a, just I don't read. I don't know. I just want something that's in the genre that I like, and so I might
Yeah.
start that myself. But again, that's one of those things. It's like I don't have time, but
Yeah.
it's one of the things I'd like to do.
Mhm.
But yeah. So, what is your reading goal for 2025?
You
One,
know, maybe.
The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Do that one.
That one does sound intriguing to
Yeah,
me.
yeah. I would
Yeah.
definitely pick that one up.
When you're talking about, I was thinking about going and getting that one.
Yeah, yep. Do it, and we can discuss.
Yeah.
But I've enjoyed talking about one of my little passions tonight. So
Yeah. And how it mixes in with horror and paranormal and
yeah,
everything.
like honestly, like some of the audiobooks, because like I said, we'll drive 2, 3. We've driven one of them was the one we did at Smith County. That was almost a 4-hour drive.
Mhm.
That one, that was a far wait. I did an entire audiobook. I started in my driveway and ended when I got back to the city. And
Mhm.
so I did an entire audiobook just on that one trip. Half
Yeah.
of it on the way, half of the other way. Loved it.
Mhm.
All right. Well, that concludes our best of 2024 Tales from the Dark Shelf.
Yep.
All right. So, any parting words for us?
Um, I guess not. We'll try to be back next week as long as everybody stays well, because there's
Yeah.
been a or two we're dealing with sickness back and forth,
Which
and
is why
so
we weren't here last week because you were sick. The week before that, I had RSV, and that started during our podcast. Because during our podcast, I was like, "I'm dying here,"
Mhm.
yeah. So
We
I
will
know,
have another episode coming
right?
soon. We're still working on it,
Hmm.
but so we've got at least that coming, and then we did a private location that we didn't do an episode at.
Hmm.
However, there is a really cool piece of evidence, some stuff we captured on camera that I'm going to see if I can get permission to share it, because it's one of those things. It was a actual physical experience that I had, but it also was documented on camera.
Hmm.
Like, not like the camera saw it too, not just me in person. And so it's something really cool. So I'm gonna see if I can share at least, the clip of that from our DVR.
Hmm.
But we just can't disclose like certain details of where the location was. But we will have an episode from the house we went to in Mississippi. So that is coming
Hmm.
hopefully in the next month or two.
Yep. And we do have a couple of private investigations this month. You have one this weekend, and I have one the next weekend.
Yeah.
So we've been keeping busy, and that's one of the reasons we've had to not have a couple of podcasts. Number one, sick. Another, we've just been out of town. We
Yeah.
we've been crazy,
Mhm.
but that's a good thing. We're doing what we love,
Yeah.
right? So I guess I will talk to you very soon. And guys, thank you for joining us. And like I said, if you have any suggestions or if you have any stories, if you have anything you'd like us to know, locations that we could go to, locations that you suggest, or just some of your paranormal experiences, let us know at crashmediaparanormal@gmail.com. And we will talk to you very, very soon. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. If you want to see more videos or want to be a part of our live investigations, hit the subscribe button. Also, if you have any ideas for future investigations or want to share your own paranormal encounters, please feel free to leave a comment or send an email to crashmediaparanormal@gmail.com.